Hello and welcome to Classic Vinyl Podcast. This is the podcast where we listen to and review songs and albums from the classic vinyl era of the 60s and 70s. I'm one of your hosts, Justin. I'm here with my other host, Tyler.
Here I am.
And we're joined by another special guest host that's been on this podcast before, my son, Austin.
Hi, glad to be back.
Welcome back.
It's good to have you. So you ready for some Steely Dan?
This is a new one for me.
Well, you've heard this song
I've heard
before.
yeah, but I'm not that familiar with Steely Dan.
Yeah, we noticed beforehand because you asked about John Fogerty and Steely Dan.
I have no idea what that.
Hey, that's why we started doing this podcast, is to teach you a little bit of music.
All I know is that Gordon Lightfoot knows all about the wreck of the Edmunds Fitzgerald.
Yes, that's true.
And that has nothing to do with this song.
Other than maybe some people consider it yacht rock, but like Austin was telling us beforehand, Steely Dan does not like to consider themselves yacht rock.
I wouldn't consider this yacht rock.
I can tell you this much. If you go to Yacht Rock on Sirius XM, they play this song.
Because it's smooth, right?
Yeah, I think Yacht Rock, really what's it become, 70s and 80s music that's kind of easy listening, but kind of rock and roll at the same time.
Yeah, I think that's why it gets lumped in there.
Because in the morning, you go gunning.
Yeah, for the man who stole your water.
Exactly.
Water's important in the desert.
Water's important on a yacht.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to get a little history of Steely Dan?
Yes, I do. I'm really interested.
I don't think we've ever done any, in fact, I know we haven't done any Steely Dan on this podcast before, but they are an American rock band founded in Annandale-on-Hudson of New York in 1971. The group was originally founded by Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, which is really the group. They really are Steely Dan. Their music's been described as combining elements of rock, jazz, R&B, blues, Latin music, you name it. They've got kind of a unique, different sound, and one of the reasons we did invite Austin here, although we like him to come here and do some songs and albums with us, but Steely Dan is definitely one of his favorite bands. And for me, I've never been huge into Steely Dan, but I like all their hits. I definitely know all their hits, and I've always enjoyed them. But their music's hard to describe, but they include on their recordings a lot of extra instruments, different instruments, trombones, saxophones, flutes, clarinets, etc., etc. I think one thing that's really interesting about this band is their lyrical content. It's really diverse and kind of puzzling, really, to be honest. It's like a lot of music, but it's hard to figure out what it means. And I think that's done on purpose.
Yeah, I had a fun time with this one.
So Walter Becker and Donald Fagen, they actually met in 1967 and actually played together in several different groups for quite a few years. They wrote a lot of songs from 68 to 71. Really what their initial thing was to do was to sell those songs to other groups to make money off, songwriting credits. But do you know the band Jay and the Americans? They joined that band in 1970 for a little while. I think Jay and the Americans seem come a little bit closer.
Oh, that's them. Okay.
Yeah. One thing that was a problem with them writing their own songs is they were pretty complex for the other artists, and they found that a lot of the other artists didn't want to sing them and didn't really understand what they meant, and just kind of thought, that song's too much for us. So really, Fagen and Becker decided in 1971, let's just start our own band.
So all these other bands are just canaries.
Basically.
They just want to sing, but they don't need to know what it's deeply about.
Exactly. So originally they recruited guitarist Denny Diaz and Jeff Baxter, drummer Jim Hodder, and singer David Palmer. So originally these two weren't going to be the singers. So Donald Fagen actually sang on the albums, but originally the reason they brought in David Palmer was to sing the songs live. But they quickly changed to Fagen, with Palmer quietly leaving the band once, I guess, he got over his stage fright.
Oh, so he had stage fright. I guess it's a little strange to have like somebody in a band performing that's got stage fright.
Yeah.
That's why my little brother plays guitar, but he doesn't like to perform. He gets stage fright real bad.
And although Steely Dan did have a full band lineup, an actual band from 71 to 74, in 1974, that's when they chose to stop touring and became basically a studio-only band, and really just Fagen and Becker using a revolving door of studio musicians to fill out the music. The band broke up, or if you want to call it, took some time off after their 1980 album called Gacho, which is a pretty cool name. but did get back together in 1993, and they actually were touring to promote their new album, Kamar Kiryad. I think that's the way you say it. So the band toured on and off from 2003 to 2017 until Walter Becker died. And I guess that answers the question me and you were talking about beforehand, Austin. I thought they were both alive, and I guess they're not. So the band has released in total 9 studio albums, 2 live albums, 12 compilation albums, and 22 singles. So in the U.S., all 9 of their studio albums were in the top 50. 8 of those studio albums were in the top 20. 5 of them hit the top 10. Their 1977 album, Aja,
Whatever you want to call it.
okay, AJA. It was their top charting album at number 3. I think that's probably their most popular album too. And like I said, I don't know Steely Dan super well, or I probably know exactly how to pronounce that.
But before we head on, I want to put some focus back on those numbers. That's pretty impressive. All of these guys' albums that they're putting out are hitting really high on the charts.
Yeah, not bad. And that's in the U.S. Okay, so in the U.K., 8 of their albums were in the top 50, 4 in the top 20. The same album, Aja, whatever you want to call it, hit number 5. In Canada, another 8 albums in the top 50, 2 in the top 10. Same album hit number 3. So that their 1977 album was obviously the most popular they had. As far as singles, in the U.S., they had 10 of their singles in the top 50, 6 in the top 20. Their top song charting at number 4 was Ricky, Don't Lose That Number. In the UK, just 3 songs hit the top 50 with their 1976 song called Haitian Divorce, which...
Great title for a song.
Yeah, it charted at number 17. That was their top charting in the UK. Going back to Canada, 9 of their singles hit the top 50, 8 in the top 20. Hey 19 and Ricky Don't Lose That Number, both charting at number 3. Overall, Steely Dan has sold over 50 million albums worldwide, which puts them in pretty rare air, to be honest. They were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2001, which is well-deserved. So, do you want to get to the song review?
Yes, I do.
And now it's time for the song review.
Okay, so before we go into the details of Steely Dan Do It Again, Tyler, what is your history with this song?
I would not know it was Steely Dan by name. In fact, I didn't even know the song by name, but as soon as it started playing, I recognized it immediately.
Pretty popular song as far as playing on radio.
Yeah.
And
It's that whole back, Jack, do it again. And so commercials use this all the time, anytime they're doing a buy one, get one or some sort of thing, right?
Yeah, and I remember this song from working in a grocery store. It always used to play in there. And admittedly, I wasn't really into this kind of music back then, but it's really growing on me now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it did seem kind of like, would you call it elevator type of music at the time, because it was easy listening. But I really enjoy Steely Dan. And like I said, I haven't dove deep into them, but I do know their hits. Now, Austin, you obviously know this song. You've dove into some of their albums, and you quite like them.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the grocery store because I vividly remember listening to that a lot in the grocery store as well. It seems like it must be a good grocery store song. But
Yeah. So let me get to a little history about Steely Dan Do It Again. This song was released on November 15th of 1972. It was obviously written by Walter Becker and Donald Fagen together. Lead vocals on this one are by Donald Fagen. It was recorded at the Village Recorder in Santa Monica, California, and produced by Gary Katz. Now, this one was from their 1972 album. It was their debut album that was called Can't Buy a Thrill. One thing about this song is they did have a single version and an album version. Single version come in a little over 4 minutes, where the album version was about 6 minutes. They basically just shortened the intro and outro, and they left off the middle section organ solo. But I think we were talking about this beforehand. I think pretty much any time you hear it on the radio nowadays, you're hearing the album version. One really cool thing about this song that I don't think any of us knew, but I found out while researching it, is there's a solo in the middle of this song, which I always thought was a guitar with some kind of effect put on, but it's actually an electric sitar solo by Denny Diaz. So it's really pretty cool, and it does sound sitar-like once you know that. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So this single reached number 7 in the U.S., number 39 in the UK, and to our friends in the North and Canada, it reached number 6. This is still Steely Dan's second highest charting single after Ricky Don't Lose That Number, which was released in 1974 that hit number 4 on the charts, like I said earlier. Now, this song's kind of looking at the lyrics as we're going through it, and it's kind of hard to decipher, but it really chronicles the problem of this guy named Jack, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's motivated by 3 things: money, women, and violence. And it's kind of goes through and chronicles all that. And he basically keeps getting himself into trouble over and over again because of these 3 things. And he really never learns his lesson, does he? The song really describes themes of excess and, I guess, would you say questionable morals?
Yeah, I would say that Jack has an addictive personality.
He definitely likes women. He's definitely into gambling.
Mm-hmm. And gets carried away.
Yeah, he gets a little carried away. And this song, like you said earlier, Tyler, it's featured on a ton of commercials, a ton of movies, a ton of TV shows. It's been covered by a lot of bands, a few of them, Falco, Smash Mouth, among others. We listened to a little bit of the Smash Mouth one, and it had a different sound, but then, would you say right when he started singing, Austin? Yeah, you said something.
Oh, there's a Smash Mouther.
Yeah, I enjoyed it until he started singing. It sounded more almost like a Doors song or something at the beginning, but then he started singing and it kind of lost me.
Smash Mouth has, especially his vocal, has that definitive sound. It automatically took me to Shrek for some reason.
Well, Smash Mouth has, their guitarist has a certain style, the way that he plays, and that put an interesting kind of twist on it. And, maybe we should be reviewing that one as well, because, it sounded like Smash Mouth. But you could tell it was the same song. It sounded really good. And then he started singing.
Yeah. I like the music in it, but the vocal really ruined that one for me. So after listening this, Tyler, for the first time, really with the purpose of reviewing it, what are your thoughts on Steely Dan Do It Again?
Okay, this one. So the instruments are awesome in this. It starts off with bongos. I'm assuming they're bongo drums because
it's what it sounds like. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, this sounds like something straight out of a jungle somewhere. And then the rest of the instruments join in. You get a little bit of that keyboard and the guitars, the bass. They pick up, and boy, it sounds really good. And then the vocals start and into the first verse, singing about this guy who's, hey, somebody came and stole Jack's water. And I'm not sure if he wants it back or wants revenge for the guy stealing his water. But he chases him basically down to the border, ends up getting himself incarcerated, and they were going to hang him.
But the hanging man wasn't working that day or something.
Yeah, he wasn't hanging people that day, so they let him go.
It seems like a really strange punishment.
For trying to chase a guy down who stole your water. I mean, the crime of theft is on the person who's being pursued, but then maybe we infer from that the person who was being pursued was apprehended, dealt with in, shall we say, a little too aggressive manner. And that's why they tracked Jack down and took him to the hangman, who just wasn't working that day, so they let him go. But he went back and did it again. Then we get on to the second verse, where he goes to I'm not sure if this is a house of ill repute or some sort of an orgy or some sort of a club. What's the word the phrase they uses to describe this lady? A woman who's not a social climber, he calls her?
Yeah, she's not a social climber.
Yeah. Great way of saying a woman with loose morals.
Yeah.
Seems to me that a lot of times when you get into these orgy rooms or sex rooms, from my experience, obviously, there's going to be drugs involved to enhance the experience. Or at least I've seen on the movie Tommy.
You're diving deep
Gypsy,
now.
the acid queen. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it seems like he gets some bad drugs. That's why I inferred, because he spends the next day on his knees. So I'm thinking he's probably on his knees in front of the toilet, puking his guts out. And maybe he got into something that just made him sick or ill in some way, but that's what I get from that. And then he goes back and does it again. Once again, does not learn his lesson. Final verse, he goes to Vegas, claiming not to be a gambling man, but then he's got a handle in his hand, whether that handle's a mug of beer or if it's the casino slot machine arm. Yeah, the one-armed bandit. Yeah, he starts playing, and then he's like, oh, the black cards will pay you better, so he starts keeping those to himself. So he's trying to cheat at cards in Vegas. It seems like he gets caught. Then he goes back and does it again. The guy just does not learn. Poor Jack. I was along for the ride. There's some really awesome solos in this. I I feel like I've just given a whole synopsis of the song, or basically told the whole story of the song. This has got some excellent, that electric sitar, gotta hear that. That solo just blew me away. But also the keyboard does its own solo, and they've got there's chimes in this. There's so many different instruments, and yet it's all put together so smoothly, and it's just so easy on the ears and comforting and laid back. I like it. What do you think, Austin?
No, I totally agree with you. I do think it's definitely easy on the ears, but I think that's very, very intentional by Fagan and Becker. I think that, well, from what I've heard, is they're perfectionists in the studio. I think that's a big portion, or a big reason why they stopped touring and became mainly a studio band later in their career. But I think you can definitely hear that in this. I heard that it took them a very long time to record some of their music, just because they would stay and retry until they got that perfect sound, the perfect lyrics and everything. And you can definitely see it and hear it in this song. Again, I think it's a great song. I do like what you mentioned about the drums at the beginning. It sounds like you're in a jungle or something, and it just sets off for a really great story. So overall, a really great song.
I'm going to chime in just for a second there. From what you said about them being perfectionists, this song, once you really sit down and listen to it, everything sounds intentional. It sounds like it was put there for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the one thing I always notice when listening to Steely Dan is you can really tell that the song didn't just get recorded in 15 minutes. It was it's more of a project instead of a song is the way I kind of like to think of it. They're really intentional about what they put in their music, and I enjoy it.
Well, and I think we got to remember this is 1972, and I think the one thing that strikes me about this song is how well it's mixed and how well it sounds, because it's a really good sounding mix, and you can tell they put a lot of effort into it. I think that's one thing I've always noticed about Steely Dan music is it just always seems like it was mixed yesterday. And this is a great song. I like Tyler said, I like the beginning of it. The piano kicks in with the bass after that. I think the vocals on Steely Dan are always really good. It's kind of surprising that Fagan was shy to sing because he's a pretty damn good vocalist. And I think the one thing that shines in this, thanks to George Harrison, is the electric sitar solo, since he brought sitars to popular music. And of course, that's coming from a Beatles fan, so it may be a little biased there, but that you said it right. That electric sitar solo is really cool, mixed with the organ and everything. The organ solo. It's got almost a 2-minute musical interlude in the middle of it, which is really cool. And I think that kind of a shame that was left off the single version, but that was the time back then. And then the last 45 seconds of the song are instrumental too. So you've got 3 minutes of this 6-minute song that are just pure instruments, which is pretty cool. The only thing I don't really generally like the way songs fade out, but the kind of music this is, it seems to work really well. So let me ask you, Austin, you've been into Steely Dan. Are there certain albums that you've been into more than others, or do you follow their popular songs as much, or how deep have you dove into them?
I would say I've listened to a little bit of everything from them, mainly started with getting into their popular songs. But once I started getting into those popular songs, it seems like they're not all just from one album. They're very spread out. There's some from Can't Buy a Thrill, some from Pretzel Logic, some from Aja. But that's one thing that I really like about them is the fact that albums are different. They sound like they're from a different era, but you can still tell that it's Steely Dan.
Do you have a certain album you'd tell someone to start with as far as an album, or is there not really one? Do you think it's better to start with their hits?
I would say if you're going to start with an album, probably Can't Buy a Thrill, this debut album. I think it just has a lot of their hits, and it's just a really great introduction to the band.
Admittedly, I haven't dove that deep into them as far as albums, and I would like to, but yeah, very good song. And there isn't any Steely Dan song that comes on that I really don't like. I don't skip them. They're really, really good. So you guys want to get to the song rating?
Yeah, let's rate it.
Song rating.
Okay, listener, if this is your first episode, I'll explain our rating system very briefly. We're 0 to 10, 10 being the best. And I put this one up there at an 8. This is a really, really amazing song. I really dig the music. It's got smooth rhythm. It's a cautionary tale for the lyric people. I love that. And yeah, Austin was so right that these guys are perfectionists. They really put everything in there intentionally. The vocals are like another instrument themselves. He's a really underrated singer, really ought to have a lot more pride in his talent, because someone like this, he's a really good singer for this kind of music, and it blends so nicely with the music. So that's where I put it in 8. Austin, where do you put it?
I would say a 10 out of 10. I think this is I think it has a little bit of something for everyone, whether you're very into vocals and lyrics or whether you're very into instruments. It's got a little bit of everything, and I think it ties it together really nicely. People have, said that it sounds like elevator music, but it's also, once you start diving into it and really listening to it, it's really great music you can tell it's crafted specifically to be a great listening experience, whether you like instruments or lyrics, and it's a great song overall. I definitely would rate that a 10. What about you? What do you think?
You know what, real quick, what really blows me away about this is we keep bringing up, it's elevator music, but when you look at like the topic of this, there's no way I'd be like playing this in a family friendly elevator.
Yeah, and that's what I like about it. I mean, the lyrics, if you're not really closely paying attention, it does just sound like an elevator song.
Mm-hmm.
But once you really dive into it, it's quite a bit deeper than that. And
For sure.
That's what I enjoy about it.
I'm about with Tyler on this. I rated an 8, which it's a very strong song. I think what shines the most about it is the mixing. Like I said earlier, I think all Steely Dan songs are mixed really well, and I kind of do feel a little ashamed I haven't dove into them a little more than I have, just because, everything I've heard of them is really great. They're really good songs. And so, yeah, this one's an 8 for me. I think the mixing does it the most justice. I think they've done a good job with it, without a doubt.
I gotta say that, Justin, you have introduced me to a lot of the classic rock, the Doors, the Who, the Beatles. But I'm really glad that Austin introduced me to Steely Dan, because I think that I really would have glossed over them as a lesser band than they really are. These guys are amazing.
Yeah, Steely Dan's a good band. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you very much, Austin, for turning me on to Steely Dan.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's Steely Dan and Do It Again. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, send them to us at classicvinylpodcast@gmail.com. And like always, we appreciate you listening. And once again, thank you, Austin, for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
See ya. Thank you so much for listening to Classic Vinyl Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Classic Vinyl Podcast for updates, and also share us with your music-loving friends.